There is a quiet power that most people overlook. It does not shout, it does not demand attention, and it does not arrive with applause. It lives in the small pause between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. In that pause sits your freedom. In that pause sits your direction. In that pause sits your life. Most people believe their destiny is shaped by events, by other people, by luck, by betrayal, by opportunity. But if you observe closely, you will see that two people can face the same storm and walk away with entirely different futures. The difference is not the storm. The difference is the inner climate. One reacts unconsciously and becomes a prisoner of emotion. The other responds consciously and becomes the author of change. Your first impulse is not your truth, it is your conditioning. It is your past speaking through your nervous system. It is your fear trying to protect its territory. When anger rises, when shame burns, when jealousy whispers, these are signals, not commands. The unconscious pushes for immediate reaction because it fears examination. Awareness interrupts this chain. Awareness says, wait, look deeper. Every uncontrolled reaction strengthens the forces within you that seek chaos. Each time you explode, withdraw, accuse, or surrender your values under pressure, you carve those patterns deeper into your character. But each time you observe your reaction and choose differently, you reshape your inner structure. You become less mechanical and more intentional. Control is not suppression. Suppression buries emotion alive and lets it poison you slowly. Control is understanding. It is witnessing the emotion fully, feeling its energy, but not handing it the steering wheel. You are not your anger. You are the one who can see it. You are not your fear. You are the one who can question it. Life tests you through people, through insult, through misunderstanding, through delay, through unfairness. These moments are not interruptions of your path. They are the path. They reveal whether you are governed by reflex or guided by consciousness. The outer conflict exposes the inner architecture. When you master your reactions, you stop being easily manipulated. Praise no longer intoxicates you. Criticism no longer destroys you. Provocation no longer controls you. You become steady, and steadiness is power. Others may still be loud, but you become effective. A person who cannot govern his reactions becomes predictable. And what is predictable can be controlled. But a person who observes, reflects, and responds with intention becomes free. Freedom is not doing whatever you feel. It is choosing what aligns with your deeper truth despite what you feel. Between stimulus and response lies your hidden throne. Sit there. Rule from there. And you will discover that when you command your reactions, you quietly command your life. Real power lies in the pause between event and reaction, though most people rush past this moment without ever noticing it exists. Something happens, a word is spoken, a message is received, a look is given, and almost instantly the body tightens, the mind interprets, and emotion surges forward demanding expression. This speed feels natural, but it is not inevitable. It is learned. It is practiced through years of unconscious habit. The pause is the thin space where awareness can enter and interrupt the automatic chain, and whoever learns to widen this space gains influence over their own direction. In that brief interval, your nervous system is writing a story about what the event means. It guesses intention, predicts threat, recalls memory, and prepares defense. Yet these interpretations are often inaccurate because they are colored by past wounds and expectations. Without a pause, you do not respond to reality. You respond to your internal narrative about reality. The pause allows perception to settle. It lets you question the first explanation your mind produces and consider that there may be more than one truth present. This pause is not weakness or hesitation. It is internal leadership. It is the refusal to let raw impulse hold authority. When you pause, you are not denying emotion. You are giving it space to be understood. Anger, fear, embarrassment, and desire all carry information, but information is not instruction. The pause separates signal from command, turns emotion into data rather than destiny. With practice, the pause becomes a place of choice. You begin to notice physical cues, the quickened heartbeat, the tightening jaw, the rising heat. And instead of acting from them, you breathe within them. That breath is not trivial, it is regulatory. It tells the body that awareness is present. Physiology shifts. Urgency softens just enough for judgment to re-enter. A different response becomes available, one aligned with values rather than reflex. Relationships are transformed in this space. Many conflicts are not born from disagreement, but from unexamined reactions to perceived disrespect or rejection. A single unrestrained reply can escalate tension that would have dissolved if given 10 seconds of reflection. The pause creates room for curiosity. What else could this mean? What question could I ask instead of what accusation could I make? Curiosity is rarely available to the reactive mind, but it appears quickly when time is inserted between trigger and action. The pause also protects self-respect. People often regret not what they felt, but what they did while overwhelmed by feeling. When reaction governs behavior, you may win the moment and damage the future. When pause governs behavior, you may lose the moment and strengthen the future. This trait is invisible to the impulsive but obvious to the reflective. Over time, living from this pause builds a stable inner center. External volatility loses some of its power to dictate internal state. You are still affected but not captured. You still feel but not blindly. Choice becomes more frequent, regret less common, and intention more visible in your actions. The pause, though small in duration, becomes vast in consequence. First impulses arise from layers of conditioning that were built long before deliberate awareness matured. They are fast, emotional, and convincing because they were designed for speed, not accuracy. The mind learns through repetition and emotional intensity, storing patterns about threat, approval, rejection, and reward. When something in the present resembles something from the past, even faintly, the body reacts before careful thought has time to form. This reaction feels like truth because it is immediate, but immediacy is not the same as clarity. It is simply the echo of what has been repeatedly impressed upon the nervous system. Conditioning is shaped by family dynamics, cultural expectations, early successes and humiliations, authority figures, and unresolved emotional experiences. These influences create shortcuts in perception. The mind begins to label situations quickly, safe or dangerous, respectful or insulting, opportunity or risk. These shortcuts are efficient, yet they are also blunt instruments. They reduce complex reality into familiar categories. The first impulse, then, is often not a fresh evaluation, but a recycled response. Because these impulses are automatic, they resist questioning. They present themselves with emotional urgency. Irritation that demands expression, fear that demands withdrawal, desire that demands indulgence. The urgency creates the illusion of correctness. The stronger the feeling, the more certain the mind becomes that it must be right. Yet strong feeling often signals activation of old emotional memory rather than accurate present moment judgment. What feels undeniable may simply be familiar. Conscious truth moves more slowly. It requires observation, context, and reflection. Tolerates ambiguity long enough to gather more information. It asks what else might be happening, what assumptions are being made, and what evidence is actually present. Conditioning does not ask, it declares. Consciousness inquires. This difference in tempo is why people so often mistake their first reaction for their deepest insight. The speed is persuasive, but persuasion is not proof. When a person begins to observe their impulses instead of obeying them, patterns become visible. The same types of situations trigger the same emotional surges. The same tones of voice provoke the same defensiveness. The same forms of uncertainty produce the same avoidance. Recognition of repetition weakens the illusion that each reaction is a fresh truth. It reveals the mechanical nature of much behavior. What once felt personal begins to look patterned. There is also comfort in first impulses because they protect identity structures. They defend the self-image that conditioning helped construct. If someone challenges your competence, the impulse may be anger. If someone questions your belonging, the impulse may be withdrawal. These reactions attempt to preserve psychological stability, but they do not always preserve reality or growth. Conscious truth is sometimes uncomfortable because it allows the possibility that the self-image needs revision. Training awareness does not eliminate first impulses, it repositions them. They become signals to examine rather than orders to execute. The impulse says, this matters to your history. Not necessarily, this defines the present. That distinction creates psychological flexibility. Instead of being driven by inherited emotional reflexes, a person can become guided by examined intention. Over time, the gap between impulse and action becomes a workshop where perception is refined and choice becomes more intelligent. Awareness transforms emotional reactions into intentional responses by introducing observation where there was once only momentum. An emotional reaction is fast, embodied, and persuasive. It rises before language fully forms, pushing the body toward action and the tongue toward speech. Without awareness, this surge feels identical to necessity. It feels as though the emotion itself is the decision maker. Awareness interrupts that illusion by creating a second position inside the mind, the position that can notice what is happening instead of being fully merged with it. When awareness is present, emotion is still felt with full intensity, but it is also seen. The difference is subtle yet decisive. Instead of saying, "I am angry," awareness allows the recognition anger is present. This small linguistic shift reflects a deeper psychological shift. The feeling becomes an experience you are having, not an identity you must obey. Distance appears, and within that distance lies the possibility of direction. Reactions are driven by urgency. They demand discharge. Their energy seeks the fastest exit through words or behavior. Awareness slows the pathway without denying the energy. It allows sensation to unfold in the body while the mind remains attentive. The heartbeat may be fast, the muscles tense, the thoughts sharp, yet something steady is watching. That steady attention prevents the emotion from becoming the sole authority. It becomes one voice among several rather than the commander of action. Intentional response is built from this steadiness. Intention requires memory of values, consideration of consequences, and alignment with long-term meaning. None of these processes function well under emotional flooding. Awareness regulates intensity just enough for these higher-order processes to come online. You begin to ask questions internally. What outcome do I actually want here? What action will I respect tomorrow? What interpretation might be incomplete? These questions cannot arise in a purely reactive state because reaction seeks release, not understanding. Awareness also changes the quality of interpretation. Emotions attach themselves to stories about what is happening. Anger says injustice is occurring. Fear says danger is near. Shame says worth is threatened. These stories may be accurate, partially accurate, or entirely mistaken. When awareness observes both the emotion and the story it carries, the story becomes open to revision. New evidence can enter. Alternative meanings can be considered. The situation becomes larger than the first emotional narrative. Practice strengthens this capacity. Each time awareness witnesses an emotional surge, without immediate enactment, new neural patterns are reinforced. The brain learns that feeling does not require instant behavior. Tolerance for internal intensity grows. What once felt unbearable becomes manageable. This increased capacity does not make a person cold, it makes them precise. Emotions become sources of information and modulation rather than forces of compulsion. In relationships, this transformation is especially visible. Awareness catches the sarcastic reply before it leaves the mouth, the defensive accusation, before it hardens into conflict, the withdrawal before it becomes distance. It offers alternative expressions, a question instead of a judgment, a boundary instead of an attack, a pause instead of an escape. These alternatives are not automatic, they are chosen. Choice is the signature of intention. Over time, living with awareness produces coherence between inner state and outer action. Behavior reflects considered direction rather than passing storms of mood. Emotional life remains rich, but it is no longer tyrannical. Energy that once fueled impulsive reactions begins to support deliberate movement, and response becomes an act of authorship rather than reflex. Control means understanding emotions, not suppressing them, because suppression only hides energy while leaving its force unchanged. When an emotion is suppressed, it is pushed out of awareness but not out of the psyche. It continues to operate indirectly, shaping tone, perception, tension, and behavior without being recognized as the source. What is buried does not become harmless, it becomes influential in secret. True control begins not with pushing emotion away, but with turning toward it with disciplined attention. Emotions are signals produced by deep layers of the mind and body. They arise before deliberate reasoning and often carry information about needs, boundaries, fears, and values. Anger may signal perceived violation. Fear may signal uncertainty or threat. Sadness may signal loss or unmet longing. To suppress these signals is like disabling an alarm system instead of investigating the fire. The silence may feel orderly, but the danger remains active beneath the surface. Suppression is often confused with strength because it creates a rigid exterior. The person appears calm, unaffected, contained. But rigidity is not mastery. Rigidity requires continuous pressure. It consumes energy to hold emotion down, and that pressure eventually leaks through irritability, fatigue, passive aggression, compulsive behavior, or sudden disproportionate outbursts. The more forcefully emotion is denied, the more forcefully it seeks expression through indirect channels. Understanding emotions requires curiosity rather than judgment. Instead of labeling a feeling as weakness or inconvenience, understanding asks what produced it and what it points toward. This investigation is experiential, not merely intellectual. It involves noticing where the emotion lives in the body, how it shifts with attention, what thoughts intensify it, and what memories it resembles. When observed closely, emotions reveal structure and movement. They are not static enemies, but dynamic processes. Naming emotion accurately is part of understanding. Vague labels like bad or stressed keep experience blurry. More precise recognition, disappointment, envy, guilt, grief, sharpens awareness and reduces overwhelm. Precision brings proportion. A named emotion is easier to work with than an unnamed storm. Language creates handles for experience, and with handles, guidance becomes possible. Control through understanding also involves allowing emotion to complete its natural cycle without compulsive action. Emotions rise, peak, and fall when they are permitted to move through awareness. They become destructive when either acted out impulsively or locked down completely. The middle path is conscious allowance without automatic discharge. You feel the anger fully, yet you choose the behavior carefully. You feel the fear fully, yet you decide the direction deliberately. The feeling is honored, the action is selected. There is also intelligence hidden in emotional patterns. Repeated emotional triggers reveal unresolved themes and internal conflicts. Instead of suppressing the repetition, understanding examines it. Why does this specific criticism hurt so sharply? Why does this type of distance create panic? The answers often reach into earlier experiences and unmet needs. Insight reduces reactivity because what is understood becomes less mysterious and less overwhelming. As understanding deepens, emotional life becomes more differentiated and less chaotic. Feelings are no longer obstacles to control but instruments of guidance. They inform decisions without dictating them. The person remains receptive but not ruled, expressive but not explosive, contained but not numb. Control then becomes flexible regulation, a living balance between openness and direction, grounded in awareness rather than force. Life. As conflicts are mirrors that reveal your inner mastery because tension with others exposes what comfort keeps hidden. When circumstances are smooth and people agree with you, your inner structure is not fully tested. You can appear patient without needing patience, appear tolerant without being challenged, appear balanced without facing pressure. Conflict removes these cushions. It brings friction, contradiction, and emotional charge, and in doing so, it shows you the true condition of your self-regulation, your values, and your unexamined wounds. In moments of conflict, reactions surface faster than intentions. The speed and shape of those reactions reveal the habits governing your inner world. A sharp disagreement may uncover pride that cannot tolerate correction. A perceived slight may uncover insecurity that depends heavily on approval. A delay or obstacle may uncover entitlement to immediate results. These qualities often remain invisible in calm periods because nothing presses against them. Conflict applies pressure, and pressure makes inner patterns visible. What disturbs you in others often points towards something unresolved within yourself. The trait that provokes disproportionate irritation, arrogance, neediness, dishonesty, coldness, frequently touches a sensitive region of your own psyche. Either it reflects a trait you reject in yourself, or it threatens a value you struggle to stabilize internally. The mirror is uncomfortable because it does not flatter. It informs. Instead of asking only how the other person is wrong, conflict invites the deeper question of why this particular behavior has such power over your emotional state. Inner mastery is measured not by the absence of emotion, but by the quality of engagement with it under strain. Anyone can speak of principles in abstraction. Conflict asks you to embody them in real time. It tests whether your commitment to fairness survives when you feel wronged, whether your commitment to truth survives when lying would be convenient, whether your commitment to dignity survives when provoked. Ideas become real only when they are costly. Conflict is the arena where cost appears. There is also a clarifying function in interpersonal struggle. It forces boundaries to become explicit. Many people imagine they have clear limits until those limits must be asserted. The discomfort of saying no, of disagreeing openly, of disappointing someone, reveals how much of one's behavior is driven by fear of rejection or desire for approval. Each boundary conflict becomes a lesson in self-definition. You learn whether you abandon your position to maintain harmony or maintain your position with measured respect. Avoided conflict does not indicate mastery, it often indicates fear. When conflict is consistently escaped, inner weaknesses remain unexamined and therefore unchanged. Resentment accumulates silently, and self-respect erodes quietly. Engaged conflict, handled consciously, strengthens psychological muscles. It develops emotional endurance, clearer communication, and more stable identity. The goal is not domination, but integration, the ability to remain internally coherent while externally opposed. Conflict also reveals your relationship with uncertainty and complexity. When challenged, the unsteady mind seeks quick victory and simple labels: enemy, fool, threat. The more grounded mind tolerates nuance. It can recognize partial truth in opposing views and remain firm without becoming cruel. This capacity indicates depth of mastery because it shows that identity is not shattered by disagreement. Each conflict, then, becomes diagnostic. It shows where you are reactive, where you are grounded, where you are still governed by old defenses, and where you are capable of deliberate choice. The mirror does not create your inner state, it reflects it with uncomfortable accuracy. Those who govern their reactions cannot be easily controlled by others because most control operates through emotional triggers, not physical force. Influence is often gained by provoking fear, urgency, anger, guilt, or desire, then directing the behavior that follows. When a person reacts automatically, their buttons can be learned and pressed, their patterns become predictable, their responses can be engineered. But where a person develops the capacity to observe emotion before acting on it, this chain of manipulation begins to break. Emotional leverage works by bypassing reflection. A shaming comment pushes someone to over-explain. A threat pushes them to comply. Flattery pushes them to agree. Manufactured urgency pushes them to decide without thinking. Each tactic depends on speed and unexamined feeling. The reactive mind moves quickly to relieve discomfort or secure approval. The self-governing mind tolerates discomfort long enough to evaluate the situation. That tolerance is a shield. It prevents others from steering behavior through emotional pressure alone. Predictability is the doorway to control. If someone knows you cannot tolerate criticism, they can silence you with it. If they know you crave validation, they can buy your agreement with praise. If they know you fear exclusion, they can guide your choices with the threat of withdrawal. Governing your reactions does not remove these sensitivities overnight, but it places awareness around them. You begin to notice the pull instead of being pulled. Awareness turns a lever into a visible tool rather than an invisible hook. There is also a difference between influence and domination. Healthy influence invites reasoning and mutual benefit. Manipulative control relies on emotional compulsion. The person who governs reactions can still be influenced, persuaded, and moved, but not cornered internally. They can say yes without surrendering autonomy and no without collapsing into guilt. Their decisions may consider emotion, but they are not dictated by whoever can generate the strongest emotional wave. Self-governance creates response flexibility. Instead of having one automatic reaction to provocation, there are multiple available responses: silence, question, humor, delay, refusal, negotiation. Flexibility frustrates manipulation because manipulation depends on a narrow reaction range. When the expected emotional explosion or submission does not arrive, the manipulator loses traction. Calm unpredictability is more powerful than dramatic resistance. This inner steadiness also changes social dynamics. People sense when emotional buttons are difficult to press. Attempts at provocation decrease when they stop producing results. Respect often increases not because of aggression, but because of composure. Composure signals that decisions are internally anchored. Others may disagree, but they recognize that pressure alone will not move you. That recognition alters how they approach you. Governing reactions does not mean becoming cold or unreadable. It means emotion passes through awareness before becoming action. You still feel insult, excitement, fear, and attraction, but you are not hurried into behavior by them. Time becomes part of your decision process. Even a brief pause reclaims authority over choice. That pause is small but decisive. It keeps ownership of behavior inside rather than handing it to whoever creates the stimulus. Over time, this practice builds psychological independence. External voices grow quieter compared to the observing center within. Suggestions are weighed, not swallowed. Demands are evaluated, not automatically obeyed. Emotional storms generated by others lose their command power. Control returns to its proper location, the governed interior, and from their action becomes deliberate instead of compelled. And so the measure of your life is not found in what happens to you, but in how consciously you meet what happens. Every challenge is an invitation to choose awareness over impulse, intention over habit, and steadiness over surrender. When you learn to pause, to understand, and to answer rather than react, you step into quiet authority over your path. No storm can fully command you, no voice can easily steer you, and no moment is wasted. Govern your inner response, and you shape your outer reality, deliberately, consistently, and with unshakable clarity.